like to give the floor off to ID. Could you share a bit more about your expertise when it comes to startup funding, and if there's anything at all that we would need to especially pay attention to when it comes to applying for funding in South Africa? Well, in Africa.
Obviously. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you also to Nadia for those very, very valid points. I mean, if I left the call right now, I've learned something today. Thank you. All right. So I'd like to come at it from a slightly different lens perspective. I like to think of it as dating or matchmaking. Okay. So there's always the two sides, right? There's the founder / startup side, and there's the funder, whether it's an angel or it's, most likely it's going to be FFF, friends, family, fans, founder, friends, family, or some kind of angel funder. So Nadia has spoken a lot about the expectations of the funders, right? In terms of being prepared, having the confidence, and all of that. I find that in my line of work, many times, let me put it like this to set the proper context. Over the last, say, 4 years, without gainsaying, I have reviewed at the very least, probably 400, 500 decks, okay? Some of them startup founders who are entrepreneurs facing the markets head on. A tiny minority, a small minority of them are intrapreneurs. So they are entrepreneurs within corporates or enterprises, okay? So they also have some kind of venture development, innovation programs, and that kind of stuff. For instance, one of the biggest banks in Nigeria about 2 years ago set up a semi-autonomous unit, as a response to the threat of the fintechs that were, mushrooming all over the place. And they said, hey, we're going to set up this semi-autonomous unit. We're going to put young people in there. They have all these ideas. They have all this energy. They are in touch with the market, with the industry. Let them disrupt us internally before a third party disrupts us. All right. So in setting the context, I found that there appeared in this data set to be a set of attributes that are present in the teams, whether they are core startup teams or they are entrepreneurial corporate venture teams. There are a set of attributes that they possess, and those were the attributes that I alluded to earlier: cognitive, communication, and technical attributes, okay, that they possess. And almost like magic, if I were to plot a chart, you would just see a section of the data set that has these attributes, and they end up having companies that last beyond 5 years. And most likely they are also the ones that go on to receive venture funds. Not all of them, but most of them. One significant attribute, and I thought you alluded to it earlier, again, is that VCs, funders, experience a high inflow of requests, and so they have to prioritize. There is a certain proportion of requests that they receive that they respond to, because they can see signals that most likely these attributes, cognitive, communication, and technical attributes that we're looking for, exist in this person that has just sent this email. And so they feel encouraged to respond. Guess what? If you find yourself in that small minority, most likely, more often than not, you will be the one as a startup founder that is scrolling through requests from funders, whether they are angels or VCs, and you're making your pick, because these attributes are easy to spot. They are the things that the funders are looking for. Unfortunately, because like Nadia said, many of these founders are very, very early stage. And I used to be guilty of this mindset thing before I started to work very, very closely with them. I used to assume that, there's a lot of things that I have picked up over the years. I have about 20 years of experience, right? And there are a lot of things I've picked up all over the place. I've picked up soft skills, hard technical skills. There are just some things that I know, because I've been around for quite some time. Many times we
I think we're losing ID there. So you get you got cut off.
Yes, I did. All right. So yes, quick disclaimer. I also haven't heard about seed count, but back to that conversation. So it just so happens, again, all of this is data driven. I wish I could share, but I don't have them properly formatted and properly prepared. When you look at the data set, you see attributes that strongly correlate with people who build, well, teams. I always like to use the word teams, sometimes solo teams, sometimes 2 to 3 to 5 teams of innovators who possess these attributes. They build enduring businesses, and then they are what the VC family or the VC community calls investor ready. Okay, and that's a separate conversation. So observing these attributes, I then had, I have this community of VCs that I interact with through a partner organization called Get Funded Africa. And I got talking with, one of them, and I had to ask that, please, can you define investor readiness? And lo and behold, they defined those exact same attributes that I had observed. And again, looking at it from the perspective of either the startup founder or the founder, it makes sense to think about it like this. So this VC explained that, put yourself in my shoes. I am always playing a chess game, okay? If startup team A comes to me asking for an investment, and startup team B comes to, for instance, Nadia, okay, no particular order here, okay? And Nadia is also a funder, okay? Unknown to both of us, both startup teams are going to go head to head in the same markets, in the same space, okay? With the same type of product. Who do you think, which of those teams do you think stands a chance to win on the long run? So the VC or the funder is always thinking, my money, if I deploy my money into your team, what I am doing is that I'm placing a bet on you and I'm putting you into a ring, right? A boxing ring, a wrestling ring, a competition ring. What's going to happen is there's someone else. I better hope that that other contestant does not have a better set of cognitive communication and technical skills than you have. And so I should be optimizing for as many of those attributes as possible. Okay, so that's exactly the kind of mindset that I help startup founders with. Like I said earlier, I have some experience working with people across the continent, South Africa, Cape Town, Uganda, Ghana, Kenya. I know that you want to know what those things are. So number one, value proposition design. I have come to be more accommodating and slightly less, more forgiving, more accommodating, because back in the day when I used to interact with this demographic, I used to be really, really, really expectant. Hey guys, how can you not know about what is called a value proposition canvas? How can you not know what's called a business model canvas? How can you not know what is a traction roadmap? How can you not know what's a lean canvas, right? But I had to start to lower my expectations and understand, like I explained earlier, that many of them haven't picked up these things the way many of us on this panel have picked up these things in our career trajectories. So that's the purpose of this coaching program, to help them not just cram and regurgitate, some kind of template that they downloaded from the internet, but to help them build the muscles and be able to put together a solid business model canvas, and based on market dynamics, competitive action, market feedback, customer feedback, mix and match, vary the elements, the components of that BMC, move them around, because it's a living document, right? And it's the same thing for many of those types of attributes. Yes, some of those things, some of those attributes that I described get articulated or expressed as documents or artifacts, like I mentioned, but not all of them. So usually there's some kind of flow. You usually start with, like Deon said, defining your value proposition. Who are you selling to, and what are you selling to them? Why do you assume that what you're selling is so compelling that someone will exchange money for it? It's one thing to walk up to me and sell a concept to me. As long as there's no money exchange, I can agree with you and walk away. We can have an agreement, right? But usually, people need some degree of personal conviction and connection to exchange money. And so something needs to be, your value proposition needs to be sticky, needs to be compelling, needs to have that theory of change component to it. So that's value proposition. You move to designing a model around that core value proposition. Then you move to solving for problem solution fits. Then you move to solving for product market fit. Then you move to solving for scale, because you really, really want to scale. Now, this is where, again, a lot of early stage founders trip themselves up, because scale is a problem for people who have passed value proposition, business model canvas, problem solution fit, product market fit. You really don't worry about scale until you have solved product market fit, right? But you hear many early stage founders worrying and obsessing about, hey, how am I going to scale? How am I going to scale? Yes, it's important to think about these things early on, but don't obsess about them too early, right? Because you will have your time. It's like being in university and worrying about your year 4 curriculum when you haven't mastered year 1 curriculum. So just in a nutshell, that was what I was about to share. I hope it is useful, and it's as useful to this audience as it has been to the people that I've worked with.